Joining us today is Mike Rozman, co-president, co-founder, chief strategy officer of Boefly. Did I get that all right, Mike?
It sounds good, Bob. Thank you for fitting it all in there.
Tell the audience what Boefly does. Give me a Boefly 101.
Sure. So we are a marketplace, Bob, that allows a lender like your listeners to be able to efficiently find business owners seeking financing. We often get compared to Match.com, but instead of dates, we're matching up small business borrowers looking for financing and lenders.
And you're really big in the franchise space. In fact, there was a great article that came out on Franchise Times. We're going to run with it, talking about Boefly. I love the title. Boefly aims to finance the masses. Can Boefly democratize the finance business? I mean, what's that all about?
We like four-syllable words, Bob. The idea is, and we certainly coverage the Franchise Times gave us. It was a nice bit of coverage for our business, and I think it tells our story really well, which is it's a frustrating process for a small business owner to seek financing, whether it be a franchise or an independent business. And what community banks are really filling a gap. The challenge that we know exists in the franchise market is everyone wants to lend to McDonald's or a large, mature brand. How do you get into those brands and even some of those smaller brands? And we found that Boefly is a very efficient way for lenders to engage with brands. Actually, one of, I think, a past panelist with you, Bob, I know he's done some work on sessions, Morgan Johns of Conestoga Bank, as developing meaningful relationships with a daycare brand. And he's done really well, and it's a brand that he first found on Boefly.
Great. Tell us about your event in Philadelphia, and I'm a fan of what you guys do, and Mike, you're a friend. What you do is you bring together the brands with the lenders, and I think it's a phenomenal forum. You have one in Philadelphia coming up in October. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when we think about what we're doing online is a virtual mechanism for borrowers and lenders to meet. When we host a franchise lending spotlight, we like to do that actually in person, kind of a non-virtual approach. And the approach is fairly simple. The brands stand up, and a senior executive from the franchise brand will stand up and give a substantive presentation, talk about continuity, where they're growing, what are the unique unit economics for their system. And we've got great brands. We have Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, Hurricane Grill and Wings, Mako and Meineke, Holiday Inn. So these brands will be coming to Philly on October 1st and giving presentations. We'll have other thought leaders. We're excited to have you join us, Bob. And the idea, quite simply, is allow these industry leaders both on the franchise brand side, but also on the lending side, to be able to connect and substantively make meaningful connections.
Great. We'll start the webinar at the top of the hour. We like to log on early to make sure all the technical glitches are worked out. You will be at the webinar for workouts, deferments, extensions, and reinstatements. So you're at the right place if that's where you're planning to be for the next hour and 15 minutes. But we're talking with Mike Rozman, the co-president of Boefly. Tell us about, you have a new product that is addressing the initiative that the administrator has for these lower micro loans. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, and so it goes back to a July 1st rule change that the administrator put in place. What the administrator found was that these sub-350 loans, under $350,000, banks didn't want to invest time on, and that it had to do a meaningful amount of cash flow analysis. The administrator said enough. Using the FICO SBSS score, the SBA's chosen credit score, lenders can actually approve a loan consistent with their policies using that score alone. They still need to capture tax returns for the closing process, but they actually approve a loan. And so we actually decided to take that idea and, in that theme of democratizing lending, to get that in the hands of a small business borrower. So we allow, for instance, a new franchisee, while they're evaluating their financing path, to get the score. Not unlike MyFICO or FreeCreditScore.com, we allow the individual, the small business owner, to get their score. We can pre-qualify them for financing, in which case you can see how we can speed up that connection process and deliver these deals. Yeah.
I'm sorry, talk about the cost on this. What's it cost the borrower? What's it cost the lender?
Yeah, so we charge a retail price of $79 for the small business borrower. We have brand relationships with a brand allows it to be free for their candidates, right? So if you want to go open up a Checkers franchise or Rally's franchise, you're not going to pay anything for that score. And what's nice is if you're a member of Boefly, if you're a lender, you can then connect with those borrowers that are seeking financing, and you'll know what their SPSS score is. You can't use it as your decisioning tool. You'll use E-Tran for that like you currently are, but you'll know you're dealing with a borrower that's already cleared that 140 hurdle. It's really, we think it's going to be a very powerful tool to impact efficiency, Bob.
Mike, Boefly's been around for 5 years. You started right at the beginning of our unpleasantness. How do you see financing coming back for Main Street, specifically address your niche, the franchising?
You know, I think certainly there are lenders that are actively competing, and they're competing on price for those multi-unit owners. If you own 10 RVs and you want to remodel, you have a path to capital, and folks aren't worried about it. You know, where we see an opportunity both for the community bank and for the franchise is how do you get that unit 1, 2, and 3 financed?
Is that
and
still
we're delivering a ton of
problematic?
value, as are the lenders.
Is that still problematic? I'm retiring out of Boeing, and I want to open up a franchise, and it's I'm using my 401k as the equity. Is that still difficult to get those type of...
Banks are always going to be very thoughtful about making that loan to that first entrepreneur. You have to be. The idea of having a strong brand behind it is a strong value, and banks are being very thoughtful about how to evaluate it. But yeah, you know, that small business owner has a whole lot of new things to take on. Financing is one of them. And that's why we built our platform to allow them to do it efficiently.
We've been advising the lenders out there to focus in 2 things in the franchise world. And please feel free to contradict me, but we're saying, hey, be careful with the startup for the one. If it's the second or third, a little bit better. But also, as a lender, focus on one particular brand. Get to know that brand and become an expert on that, and that could solve some of your learning curve problems. How do you feel about that approach?
You know, I think it's a smart approach, Bob. Whenever, and actually, again, Morgan Johns in that article in Franchise Times discussed how he took a deep dive in a brand called Kitty Academy. He did one deal, liked the economics, invested more time, cost no management. So I think it's a very thoughtful approach. I also think it raised the question, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you get comfortable with the brand and you like the franchise model, really be thoughtful about how you're going to connect with other brands down the line.
Yeah, but you can expand that. In terms of expertise or niche, you can certainly go hospitality, quick serve, any segment, industry segment that you want. But I've always liked the concept of becoming an expert in a particular brand, and like you said, don't focus on one, but maybe 3 or 4. Because franchise financing can do very well, and the stats prove that out, Mike. Franchise is a little bit better performance in the SBA world for franchises than mom and pop.
Absolutely, and it's well known by a lot of smart bankers is that there's a consistent path to deal flow. You always have to ask your question, how are you going to find that next business owner? And if you get comfortable with the brand and use platforms like Boefly, you're going to find the next franchise.
Great. Last pitch. What are you charging the lenders to come to Philly?
I think it's on the order of a whopping $99, Bob, and that includes cocktails for you.
And you get lunch, don't you?
And you get breakfast, lunch, and cocktails. You get it all covered for $99.
I love it. If you're in the Northeast area, I encourage you to do that. I've been to several of these events. You guys do a great job. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you.
I'll take care.